Hi guys, Ben Habib is a pretty horrible individual. We all heard him say that he'd be okay with letting people drown in the sea. When asked to clarify, of course he doubled down. So of course he's going to call Keir Starmer all the names under the sun, including anti-British. But what Reform UK and Ben Habib in particular are afraid of is that their platform to spread hate will be taken away from them. In a sense, it'll be more difficult for Reform to make voters angry with misinformation. So instead of trying to adapt to the new reality, they're trying to turn it into a war against Starmer. I don't think this is going to work, at least in the short term. It just shows a party that's getting more and more desperate.
Do you think there's any evidence, while they're busily saying we should all be censored online and let's take down, Elon Musk and X, do you think there's any sense that there is any...
Okay, nobody's talking about censorship and nobody's talking about bringing down X or Twitter or Elon Musk. See, this is part of the problem here. This is part of the misinformation that's been put out on a daily basis. Nobody is talking about doing this. It's talking about regulating social media, talking about punishing those responsible if they don't regulate the content on social media.
Understanding that people's concerns about both legal and illegal migration are legitimate, they are well-founded, and they are reasonable concerns.
No, I don't think there is any understanding of it in government. I think Keir Starmer is a globalist. He's pro-EU. He's quite prepared for the country to be governed by a third party in Brussels.
Britain was not governed by the European Union when it was a member of the European Union. Ben Habib will say this, but he has no evidence to back that up. Britain was governed. So he would have to apply this rhetoric or this logic to countries that are currently members of the European Union. So they're not sovereign states, they're not independent countries because they're members of the European Union.
And he's prepared to take our borders down because to be a member of the EU, you've effectively got to buy into the stupidity of borders coming down. So
How well has controlling the border, quote unquote, gone on since Brexit? Because what happened, of course, this is nothing to do with borders. This is about immigration in general. What happened? European immigrants left, as Ben Habib and others wanted, and they were replaced with people from other parts of the world. But this is completely separate from asylum seekers. And what they tried to do is mix all these things together. Mix the idea of people coming to Britain to work in the care sector, for example, with people crossing the channel in small boats, with people who are arriving by other means. All of these things are mixed together and sold as some sort of problem, as an immigration problem.
So Keir Starmer, in my view, any individual who wants to be governed by a third power and is prepared to take the United Kingdom's borders down is basically anti-British. And that may make people's eyes swivel in their heads and eyebrows wobble all over the place. But that is the truth. He is anti-British. You cannot claim you believe in the nation state of the United Kingdom if you're simultaneously prepared to take its borders
But he's very
down.
big on posing and giving speeches with a British Union flag behind him, isn't he? He's very good. But this is the thing: the reason why the elites, and again, an awful lot in the Tory Party feel the same way. Certainly, the Liberal Democrats, they're very open about this. But huge swathes of the Labour Party believe this idea that actually they don't think the British people, certainly these ghastly British working class people who voted for Brexit, people like you and me as well, we're all on the same vein, that they can't be trusted to make decisions about how to run our country.
No.
You need to give it to the highly educated, technocratic elite.
You're talking about people like Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson used to be Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak, Prime Minister. Liz Truss for 5 minutes. Like, don't you understand these people went to private schools? These people were much richer. Rishi Sunak, is a bit of an anomaly, but generally the Conservative Prime Ministers were better off than the average person on the street. And now all of a sudden you're saying, how can people be how can the government criticize people? But the government is not criticizing how people vote. So what she's trying to do here is suggest that, well, if you're working class, you're racist. That seems to be the impression I'm getting. Working class means racist. Working class is somebody who's anti-immigration. Not everyone who's working class is racist. As we've seen, lots of racists are not working class. So class doesn't really come into this.
In Brussels and take it away from us because we can't be trusted. And as you say, they don't have any, they're anti-British, they don't actually have any respect for the British people.
They don't. And it's a tragedy because...
Who doesn't have respect for the British people? I presume he's talking, or they're talking about the government here. In what way don't they respect the British people? Is this about punishing people who are trying to incite violence? Those people don't have any respect for the British people. Are you suggesting people who tried to burn down an asylum centre, a hotel, people who kicked in people's doors, who attacked the police, which resulted in some of them going to hospital, those people have the interests of the British people at heart?
The Labour Party should be standing up for British working class. That's who they're meant
British
to
jobs.
represent.
I remember when
British
Gordon
jobs.
Brown said British jobs for British people.
Absolutely. And nowadays, that would be verboten to say something. You'd be accused of being racist. It's got nothing to do. They've associated people's genuine and legitimate desire to reduce immigration with xenophobia and racism. And they've...
No, they haven't. When has Keir Starmer ever said that people who have legitimate concerns about immigration are racist? It's a nonsensical phrase. Because if you have legitimate concerns, and obviously racism has nothing to do with it. Racists should not be amplified. See, I keep coming back to the main point here. Reform UK, Farage and others are concerned that there's going to be punishment for incitement. Well, there is already, it's already against the law, but it hasn't been enforced. Now it's going to be enforced, and they're going to have to change their rhetoric. They're going to have to change how they approach issues like immigration. They keep saying we need to have a discussion. We've been having a discussion since 2015. But what they're afraid of is that they'll have to change how they speak to the public. And if they have to change how they speak, then they're going to obviously they're not going to be successful in winning over racists and bigots. They need these people to come out and vote for them. But in order to convince them to come out and vote, you need to make them angry. But if you make them angry, there's a risk that you could end up in prison. That's what they're concerned about. They're not interested. They're not interested in protecting free speech or anything like this. If they did, once again, as I said in other videos, they would be supporting the UK remaining part of the European Convention on Human Rights. But they want out of that. How can you say, I care about free speech, but I want out of the European Convention on Human Rights, which is required to protect free speech? What people will say in return to this is, well, we can have our own Bill of Rights. Yes, but if the British government doesn't respect your freedom of expression, where do you go then? If there's an international court, you can go there. These people are not interested in the concerns people have about it. True concerns about immigration related to housing or integration. These are legitimate concerns people can have. But Reform UK is not interested in those discussions. It's about whipping up anger in order to convince people to come out and vote for them. It's always been the case. We go all the way back to UKIP. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.